Bostrom Ministries. Beginning January 2018, Bostrom Ministries engaged in a whole new assignment by entering the airwaves of the world. Don't miss Ken and Mary Bostrom Ministries Live.
Welcome back to another episode of Ken Bostrom Ministries, United in His Purpose. We're excited when people let us know that they are enjoying everything that we're doing. I just had a text that just came across my iPad here and said, "I love your high fives." I do a high five, 5-day high five in July of 2019. The Lord said, "I want you to start doing a high five." And, you know, that means lift up your hand. If you do that to a child, they'll lift up your hand and bring their hand up higher to meet yours. And so high five is to give you something to chew on, meet you in the spirit, give you something from the Word of God to chew on. 5 minutes. I'm supposed to be 5 minutes. I'm not very good at keeping 5 minutes. 5 minutes, 5 times a day, and it's on Facebook Live, and it's also on YouTube. And so I've enjoyed doing that. But let's get back to what I'm doing. I'm supposed to be doing here, and that's I'm teaching on the tribes. Now we've had Leah had 6 sons, and both of the handmaidens each had 2. That's 10. So the next one is going to be the 11th one, and poor Rachel hasn't had a baby yet. But here we go. She had a baby, and his name is Joseph. And Rachel said, she named him, "He will add." She said, "I had a baby, now I'm going to have another one." So she was just looking forward to having more children. He will add. He was the 11th son of Jacob, and he's the first son of Rachel. Now, when Rachel died, when she had Benjamin, in this, the Passion Translation, they have it in Genesis now. This is really good. And he said that when Jacob left Esau, when he fled and left Esau, he was in his 70s. I'm going like, you got to be kidding. I thought he was like in his 30s. So I started going back and laying down the ages and everything. He was in his 70s when he was a mama's boy in his mama's tent the whole time until his 70s when he got kicked out of the house. And so when his wife Rachel died, he was 99. She was 36. He was 33 years older than Rachel. No wonder he thought she was so beautiful. And but this is when we get into Rachel. And so Genesis 30:22, then God remembered Rachel. God did not forget anything about Rachel. This is where the promise, that word remember is Zakar. Every time you say Zakar, it means a promise into the now. And that's why Jesus, when he said, "Do this in remembrance of me," with the communion. If you take communion, remembering everything that Jesus provided for us with his death, burial, and resurrection, it brings the promise into now. That's why it's called the healing, the meal that heals, because it brings miracle working power into a simple act that a lot of people just use as tradition. But here, when God remembered Rachel, she got pregnant, and God listened to her and opened her womb. And she conceived and bore a son and said, "God has taken away my reproach." And she called his name Joseph and said, "The Lord shall add to me another son." So she wasn't just rejoicing in him, she was already looking forward to the next one. Jacob's prophecy over Joseph was in Genesis 49:22. Joseph is a fruitful bough. A bough means, this word is in Hebrew is son, ben, a son, and it means an anointed one, a builder of the family name. So Joseph is a fruitful builder of the family name, a fruitful bough by a well. And that means it's going to continually being watered from the ground. His branches, now the word branch is kind of interesting because the Hebrew word here is bath, and it means a daughter. And it's speaking of the daughters of Manasseh, which get an inheritance that first time women ever got an inheritance. And so he's talking about his branches or his daughters shall run over the wall. They shall inherit land. The archers here, this word is Chets, and I think that's Chets or Kates, I'm not sure. But it means pierces, a wound by the shaft of an arrow, speaking of the suffering of Joseph. You know, when your family hurts you, you expect enemies and stuff but your family to hurt you? That's what happened to him. His family, his brothers wounded him so much. They took off his robe, they robe of many colors. They threw him into a well. They beat him up, and then they sold him. Then they told his father he was dead. It says, the archers, or those that pierced me, have bitterly grieved me, shot at him and hated him. But his bow, now this is interesting, his bow remained in strength. His accuracy remained in strength. You know, he was so accurate that when he was in the prison, when he was in the dungeon, he still was the head and not the tail, above and not beneath, blessed coming in and blessed going out. His bow remained in strength. His arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Joseph's bow, there's something about the strength of him that he could look ahead at the great shepherd who would be Jesus Christ. And that's where his strength came from, the prophetic, that he could see into the distance. You know, a bow doesn't look like much, but it can shoot swiftly, and it can shoot accuracy, and it can go a great distance. And that's when you can see something in the spirit realm. He was gifted to be able to see in the spirit realm that gave him strength. When he was in the dungeon, when he was, you know, he prophesied over the baker and a butler, and he said to the one, I think it was a butler, you know, remember me when you get out of here. The butler forgot about him until all of a sudden Pharaoh had this dream and nobody could interpret it. And he said, oh my goodness, I forgot about this man in the dungeon, that in the prison, that understands dreams. And God gifted him to see ahead. There's going to be 7 fat years followed by 7 lean years. And Joseph was brought into a position of rulership in all of Egypt, the greatest, wealthiest nation, empire in the world, until God got a hold of him in Exodus. And verse 25, by the God of your father who will help you, and by the Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breast of the womb. 3 different blessings. So the blessing from above, if you're talking about the blessing that'll come from heaven, that is dew from heaven. That's the presence of the Lord. It's talking about rain. It's talking about sunshine. It's talking about angelic assistance. That is everything. He's blessing them with a blessing from heaven above. And then he blesses them from the deep that lies beneath. See, you know, if you're going to go looking for jewels or oil or something, you're not going to see them laying on the sidewalk or on the, you know, when you're mowing grass, you're not going to see them. When the treasures you have to dig for. And the treasures here, he has promised blessings beneath, which is promised wealth of minerals, gemstones, oil, fountains of the deep, and fertile ground. That is a great blessing that he's blessing with. Blessings of the breast of the womb. This is children, both natural and spiritual. The blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and the crown of the head of him who is separate from his brothers. The crown of the head, there's two different tribes that the kings will come from. Judah, remember Judah? The kings came from the tribe of Judah. And like Jesus, the lion of the tribe of Judah. And the other one will come from Joseph's last son. His name is Ephraim. So, when the 12 tribes separated and they had the northern 10 tribes, that was Israel, they had the southern 2 tribes, that's Judah. This happened after Solomon's reign, after Jeroboam and Rehoboam. And I remember, J.R. Ewing from whatever, I don't remember what, Dallas, I think it was called Dallas. And I remember Jeroboam is the northern one, Rehoboam is the southern one. Those are the first 2 kings of the split kingdom. Jeroboam came from the tribe of Ephraim. Rehoboam came from the tribe of Judah. And that's where the king's from. And see, that was prophesied way back then. The crown of the head. The crown of the head. And the separate means consecrated, separated, consecrated. That's what, and the root word here is nazar, like a Nazarite. A Nazarite was separated for a specific purpose, and they had a lot of limitations on themselves, what they could do and that they couldn't do. Now, Moses' prophecy, and of Joseph he said, "Blessed is the Lord of his land, with the precious things of heaven, with the dew, the deep lying beneath," almost word for word exactly of Joseph's prophecy. "With the precious fruit of the sun, and with the precious produce of the months." That word months there is the moon. Now, it's kind of interesting. I was reading in Gwen Shaw's book, and she said the United States is considered by some to be the land of the children of Joseph. Isn't that interesting? That the United States is called the land of the children of Joseph. And the first nation to land on the moon. And here it says, with precious fruits of the sun, with the precious produce of the moons. That word month there is moon. And so the first nation to land on the moon. I just thought that was interesting when I read that, because I love the teachings of the signs in the heavens. Verse 15, with the best of the ancient mountains, and with the everlasting things of with the precious things of the everlasting hills. They'll have the high territory. Amen. And here he finishes with the precious things of the earth and its fullness, and the favor of him who dwelt in the bush. Now the bush here is referring back into, if you talk about the hills, we're talking about if the hills, Mount Sinai, the mountains where Moses would meet with God, where they would go up higher to meet with the Lord. The bush here refers to the supernatural presence of the Lord visitation. Remember when Moses came, now Moses was from the tribe of Levite, so he wasn't from this tribe, but here Joseph is getting the promise from his descendant that he's going to have visitation just like Moses did. It's referring to the burning bush that would bring deliverance to the Israelites. God wants to visit Joseph's generation with a burning bush experience, personal visitation from God. Well, that excites me more and more all the time, because we have been waiting for the great awakening in the United States of America. And I'm going to start using this verse right here, because if the United States is likened to the sons of Joseph, then this belongs to our nation. That we will have favor with the dwelt of him who dwelt in a bush. That when I first got born again, I had some major supernatural experiences. And I want to tell you about one experience. And it was, I was born again July 4th, 1982. Everybody celebrates that spiritual birthday. They have the day off. They have fireworks. They have picnics. They have parades. And I was teased about that they're celebrating my spiritual birthday because it was a big deal. Trust me, it was a big deal. And it was about a month or two after that, the Lord started talking to me about calling me into the ministry. And it was like, oh my gosh, there is no way. I couldn't stand in front of people. I didn't like to read. I didn't like to study. It's like, and so we went down to visit my sister-in-law and her husband down in Nebraska. We lived in Minnesota. We went to visit Nebraska, Fremont, Nebraska. And we went to the Assembly of God Church in the morning. That's where they were going. And the Spirit of the Lord got all over me, like, are you going to accept this call into the ministry? And it's like, no. Well, when we got home, we had lunch, and I couldn't eat, and they sat down to watch a service on TV. I can't remember what it was. I know my husband liked Jimmy Schwager back then, and it's probably that's what they were watching. And I couldn't even sit down. So I went for a walk, and I power walked. And I was looking at the ground and I was power walking, and then I said to the Lord, I said, if you promise me that you will be with me and never leave me, I will do the work of the ministry. And I looked up, and there was an oak tree in front of me that was on fire. I saw fire shooting out of that oak tree. And inside, it was the Lord saying, it's a deal. I promise I'm going to be with you no matter what. And I'm going to be with you every step of the way. And later on, I went back to that tree, and there was nothing special about that tree. It was God was in that tree at that point. The glory of the Lord was all over that tree. I know what Moses was like when he talked about the burning bush. Well, this is the promise that is given to the United States of America. If they're likened to the promises of Joseph, we can take this to the bank. Because if you watch over God will watch over his word to perform it. It said, let the blessing come on the head of Joseph and the crown of the head of him who is separate from his brother. His glory is like the firstborn bull. His horns like the horns of a wild ox. Now the wild ox right there, you think about an ox, but that, if you go back to the original Hebrew, it's a unicorn. I didn't know unicorns were in the Bible. Unicorns are so popular right now. If you went to see my granddaughter who's 9 years old, she wants unicorn this, unicorn that, unicorn shirt, unicorn pajamas, and it in the Strong's Concordance it says probably it's a unicorn. It's probably the great AUROCHS, or wild bulls that are now extinct. The exact meaning is not known. Now one thing about unicorns back then, and we find this in Job 39, 9 through 12, Job 39, 9 through 12, unicorns cannot be tamed. Unicorns cannot be tamed, and this is why it's called a wild ox. And his horns shall be like the horns of a wild ox. Now, why it says horns, plural, unicorns have one horn. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look at that again. Therefore, they shall push the people to the ends of the earth. They shall push the people to the ends of the earth. Now, push the people, that means Joseph's descendants are also going to be great missionaries. And if you look at the wording that they use, the people that say that the United States of America is the descendants of Joseph's descendants, that we have been the most mission-minded nation ever in history. Reaching nations that have never been reached. Now they're having to have missionaries come back to our nation and try to evangelize us because we've gone the wrong way. But here, push the people. That meant they're going to be great missionaries. Push, push, push. They have the drive to get out there. And there are 10,000s of Ephraim, and there are thousands of Manasseh. They are the 10,000s of Ephraim and the thousands of Manasseh. Now, Manasseh was the firstborn. Ephraim was the secondborn. Those are the two sons of Joseph. We're going to talk about those two next week. But let's go back to Reuben, the firstborn. Remember, Reuben slept with his Rachel's handmaiden after Rachel died. Reuben was always looking out for the best for his mother. He was the oldest son. He was the firstborn. He loved his mother. He hated the way his father treated his mother. And so he was always defending his mother. So when Rachel died, Reuben thought, now he'll finally sleep with my mother. Now he'll finally move his bed to my mother's tent. No. He moved his tent to the handmaiden of Rachel, not to his other wife, Leah. And he was so mad that Reuben went in there and he slept with Bilhah, who was the handmaiden of Rachel. Now, he didn't realize how mad his father was going to be about that whole thing. His father was furious. Now, there's three things that the firstborn, Reuben was the firstborn. He should have been the priest of the family. The role of priest between God and the family. He should have had a double portion of everything. So, when it's time for the father to die and the reading of the will, everybody gets a portion, but the firstborn gets a double portion. And also the rulership. The father's authority or head, making the decisions. When you go to the head of the family and ask, can I do this? And back then they did. They had to get permission from the head of the family. Can I marry this woman and stuff like that? He lost that. He lost the double portion. He lost the priesthood, and he lost the rulership. The rulership went to Judah. Judah, from that point on, all kings and rulers came from the tribe of Judah. The priesthood went to Levi. Under Moses, it was Moses and Aaron, and they were from the tribe of Levi, and all the priests had to come through the tribe of Levi. And the double portion went to, Joseph doesn't have land. It wasn't appointed, but his sons got double. His sons got double land. So the same portion that the regular sons would have, the adopted sons. Now, Jacob adopted Joseph's two sons. Now that's very important. Do you know even the United States has taken that adoption policy that the Bible has? If you are adopted, you can never be disowned. You can disown your own natural children that come from your womb, but you cannot disown an adopted one. Now that's an amazing concept that should give some of you some hope. That God is not, even in your natural family, if you're adopted, no matter what you do, they can't disown you, but they can disown their own children. Now, you take that into when we are adopted into the family of God. That means He is not going to disown us. He's not going to kick us out. And so Manasseh and Ephraim, which we're going to study next week, they were adopted by Jacob. So now all of a sudden he has 14 sons instead of 12. And so when you get into the portion of dividing the land, Manasseh has actually a double portion, we're going to see that, than everybody else. And Ephraim has a portion too. And so here we're at the end of Joseph. Now we're going to get into Manasseh and Ephraim. The last one we're going to get into is Benjamin. But I hope you've been enjoying this teaching on the tribes of Israel. Chuck Pierce from Glory of Zion he always has so much information, and he makes it so user friendly. It's not like reading your Bible and you just kind of go over it and you just like, okay, I read that. Reading the Bible through in a year, it's just kind of like a duty kind of thing. But when you have somebody just open it up, all of a sudden it gets exciting. And I want the tribes to be exciting to you because they are important in the last days. And throughout the New Testament, throughout the book of Revelation, they are important. So I hope you've enjoyed it. Tune in again next time. God bless you. Bye-bye.
This is Ken and Mary Bostrom. We thank you for joining us today. We welcome you to watch us on kbntv.tv, YouTube, Facebook, mbostrom2.com. Also listen to us on WRNO Shortwave Radio. Contact us at kenbostromministries.org. God bless you today.